Hello, everyone. Welcome to your Path of Licensure presentation. My name is Sean, and we are going to give it a few minutes to just see how many individuals we let in here. We'll probably give it about 1 or 2 minutes after the hour, and we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. If you guys want, if you want to go ahead and this isn't going to be a poll, but if you want to use the Q&A feature, you want to go ahead and maybe just say where you are at in the licensure process. Are you considering a career in landscape architecture? Are you earning your degree, gaining professional experience, taking the exam or license? Or please share if you're here for other reasons. Gaining professional experience, great. Gaining professional experience, good, good. Patiently waiting. We hope to have results out within like the next week or so. So I know we don't give you guys a hard date, but we really have to do that because of when we receive them and the things that we have to do on the back end in order to release them. And so we're hoping by next week you guys will have the official scores. Recently graduated, congratulations. Personal experience, getting licensure after work experience. It seems like everybody's kind of in the same process. I hope that that goes smooth for all of you. Alaska, well, welcome. Two sections in December. Good luck to you guys. I hope that works out. After 20 years in Puerto Rico. Wow. Congrats. I will ask, I do see that we're using Q&A and we are also using the chat. If you guys don't mind just kind of keeping your questions in the Q&A or your comments in the Q&A. I do have Staten here today that is going to be helping me navigate the Q&A. And so it's just going to be a lot easier to kind of have that all in one place. But we are 2 minutes after the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Sean Menifee. I am the Record Service Senior Coordinator here at CLARB. I've been here almost 5 years in October. And then I have my colleague Staten Johnson here that's going to be helping me out with reading out questions, answering any questions that she can in the Q&A that pop up, and then assisting in any other way that we can. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us today. We hold these two presentations twice a year. And so we really, really do appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and hopefully learn some things. So this event is being recorded and you will have access to this event probably about a week or so after we're done today. We will post it onto our website and we'll send out notification letting everyone know that it is available. Again, Q&A and Zoom, if you don't mind kind of leaving your comments to there, that would be great. And there are closed captions for anyone that needs to take advantage of that. All right. So again, your support team. My name is Sean Menifee. I'm the Record Service Senior Coordinator here at CLARB. My colleagues, Lindsay is not on today, but she is a Record Service Coordinator as well. And then Staten Johnson as well as a Record Service Coordinator. And so these are going to be the three individuals that you will speak to throughout the process of licensure, whether you are not done getting your degree yet, maybe you're done with your degree and you're just starting to figure out what it is that you need to do with CLARB, or maybe it's you're already licensed and you want to get licensed in other jurisdictions. Either way, we're going to be the three individuals that will assist you in anything related to licensure for landscape architects. So our agenda today is what is licensure, how to get licensed. We're going to go over the exam. I'm licensed, now what? And then we have Q&A. I typically do about half of the slides and I stop for questions because it's a lot of information that is dumped very quickly and I want to just make sure that I capture all the questions when they come up. And so please, as we go through the slides, feel free to throw your questions into the Q&A. Staten will monitor that. And then when we stop for questions, I'll answer a couple of them, and then we'll move on and answer more questions at the end. So we're going to start with a little bit of lingo here at CLARB. So CLARB is for short. We are the Council of Landscape Architect Registration Boards, but we again CLARB for short. The LARE, so the Landscape Architect Registration Examination. The CLARB record, which is going to be an online verified system of all of your information that you need in order to apply for licensure. So education, your employment history, your scores once you have them, your license once you have those as well. We compile that all into one space and make it a lot easier for you to apply for licensure when that time does come. Jurisdiction, that's going to be your state or your province that you live in. So if you live in New York, your jurisdiction is going to be New York. If you live in Calgary, your province is going to be Calgary. And then licensing and registration boards. And so your board is going to be the state board that is within your state that issues your license, that creates the experience and education requirements that you need in order to become licensed. So it's really important to know the difference between these because they all do play a different role in you gaining licensure. So what is licensure? Licensure protects the health, safety, and well-being of the public. That sums it up. It's all about the health and safety of the public, and that's really why we push for licensure. And I'm sure many other landscape architects that have junior landscape architects coming in are going to push for licensure as well. It is required in all 50 U.S. states, much of Canada and beyond. And so if you want to stamp and sign drawings in the United States or Canada, you will need to be a licensed landscape architect. Locally administered by state, provinces, regulatory boards. And so again, your state is going to be the entity that creates the experience and education requirements that you have to meet in order to pursue licensure in their jurisdiction. Even though it's a national exam, every state board is going to have different experience requirements that you will need to meet in order to become licensed. So licensure protects the health, safety, and well-being of the public. Licensed landscape architects are trusted to investigate, select, and allocate land and water resources, formulate feasible studies and graphic written criteria to govern the planning, design, and management of land and water resources. Prepare, review, analyze land use master plans, subdivision plans, and preliminary plats. Determine the location and sitting of improvements, including buildings and other features, as well as the access and environs for those improvements. Design landforms, stormwater drainage, soil conservation and erosion control methods, site lighting, water features, irrigation systems, planning, pedestrians and vehicular circulation systems, and related construction details. Licensure is required and locally administered. So you can sit in not only the United States and Canada, but really you can take the exam from anywhere. We now have it that you can take all 4 sections online from any location as long as you have the internet speed in order to do so. But also we have in-person locations all over the world. If they are outside of the United States and Canada, we will ask that you reach out to CLARB in order for us to help you get an in-person location. But as far as inside the United States and Canada, you will be able to book your appointments online for in-person or online. So benefits of professional licensure, it demonstrates expertise, leadership, and equal status with architects and engineers. It's a key differentiator with clients and the public. I know that landscape architects work beside engineers, architects, surveyors, planners almost every day. And so this is a way to just really bring you up to equal status with these individuals that you're working with. Career advancement opens up doors of specialization, entrepreneurship, and mentorship opportunities for career growth. And so I think really just like any other career, once you get licensed, there's a potential for you to make more money. You could even run your own firm, which it seems like that's what most landscape architects do, is they strive to become licensed and then eventually become principal of a firm or open up their own firm. And then earning potential employers and clients are willing to pay more for the credibility and expertise that a licensed landscape architect provides. And so I think that one goes without being said. As much as it's important for you to kind of crush an interview when you go into it, I think it's just as important for you to interview any employee that you're going to be looking for employment with, because as you know, there is a price to be able to become licensed, whether if it's paying for the CLARB record or the board application or paying to actually take the exam. These fees can add up, and so I think it's very important to ask what employees can do for you as well. How can they help you through the process of licensure? Can they pay you back for the exam? Can they pay for your CLARB council record? Do they reimburse you for time that you have to take off to go and take the exams? So there's a lot that goes into taking licensure, and I think it's important to make sure that you're set up the best you can be and prepared for the opportunities that are in front of you, and just making sure that the company that you choose to move forward with is going to help you with your career advancement. So this is a study by Oxford Economics, Landscape Architecture included in the high skill group. We know that licensure has a positive impact on salary. And this study shows that licensure has a 6% impact for women and 8% impact for non-white people in high skill jobs. These are relatively much higher increases than those for white men in landscape architecture. The current study body is significantly more diverse than the profession. A diverse profession is better prepared to serve diverse communities as well as a full range of communities nationwide. In short, licensure helps close the gender and racial income gaps while protecting the public. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and see if there were any questions that needed to be answered before we continue to move forward.
We just got a great question from Will Prescott. He asks, when does a project require a licensed landscape architect? I understand the educational benefits of licensure, but I've struggled to find firm details about what types of projects require a licensed LA versus an unlicensed landscape designer.
Yeah, so when it comes down to the projects, it's really going to be if you are wanting to sign and stamp drawings. A landscape architect is going to need to be able to sign and stamp drawings in order to complete a project for a landscape architect. If not, you would have to pass that off to like an engineer or an architect, someone else that can sign that. So I think it just helps kind of close the gap of how many people really need to be on a job when a landscape architect can actually stamp and sign drawings there on the site. Hope that answers your question.
Um, well, just checking to see if we've got any other questions. Pam, oh,
It's fine to just read the question.
yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I
yeah,
saw a little thumbs
it's
up going
okay.
up, so I wasn't sure what was going on.
Yeah.
What are the materials for CLARB or LARE? Which one do you recommend after graduation? So I think this question is asking about preparing for the LAR.
Yeah, of course. So preparing for the LARE, we have a couple different resources on our website. We have recommended reading list that is selected by the exam writing committee, which is made up of 32 individuals, well, landscape architects that come together to actually create the exam. And so all the reference material that they use as far as books, they put that information onto the website and say, hey, this is where you can find this information. This is the recommended reading list that you can use. Here's the books that you can use in order to become prepared. CLARB has also rolled out practice exams for each section. We rolled these out about 2 years ago, and we have not made any changes to those yet. So if you have purchased a practice exam previously, they will still have the same content and the same questions for each section. But those are $25 a piece, and you get 3 attempts at those within a year. And then obviously you can use those whenever. And then I would always recommend if those are not enough materials, you can also reach out to ASLA and see if they have any type of study groups or work groups that come together. I know they hold like demystifying sessions, they hold Larry prep sessions. And so there's a lot of information out there. And I would say just really be careful with the reference material that you use. Clark can only recommend what we have on our site and what ASLA provides, but that's not to say that there isn't other relevant information out there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Sean. We've got one more. Are there scholarships slash grants available for those of us who would like to get licensed?
Yes, there are certain scholarships or programs that are available. We do have access to those on the website. So if you want to check out the website, you should be able to go in there. If you can't find that information, just reach out to us directly, and we can point you in the direction where you can find that information. And ASLA is also another place that you can reach out to and to figure out if they have any type of grants or scholarship opportunities to help you through the process.
Um, is CLAR practice exam separate from LARE prep?
Yes, it is. Yep, LARE prep is ASLA, and then CLAR practice exams is with CLAR.
Awesome. Okay, so we have someone asking, do you have to take the licensing exam and pass it in all of the states where you want to get licensed, or do you only need to pass the LARE once?
So you only need to pass the LARE once, so it is a national exam. However, each state is going to have different requirements. So, for instance, let's just use Florida as an example. Florida with a landscape architecture degree that is accredited, you will need 1 year of experience under a licensed landscape architect. If you go to California, California with a landscape architecture degree needs 2 years of experience, with one of those years being under a licensed landscape architect. So it really does change from state to state. CLARB is looking, or we have already rolled out a uniform application in a couple of states, a uniform standard, and a couple of states have adopted that. And that's really an opportunity for CLARB to say, hey, if you're able to get licensed in one jurisdiction, you should be able to get licensed in another jurisdiction. There shouldn't be this gap of experience that you would need to gain in order to pursue licensure in another jurisdiction. And so it's one exam, but the experience that you will need will change based off the state or province that you choose to pursue licensure in.
And then if we have time for one more question, we have a couple
Yep.
of people asking about whether the LARE exams expire after a certain amount of time or if there's a limited time period they have to take all four.
Good question. So CLARB does not have a clicking time clock. We do not say, hey, you need to take the exams and you have this much time after starting the exam. However, there are states that do have a ticking time clock, and typically that time frame is, I want to say, 5 years or 4 to 5 years from when you start your first exam. But for the most part, most states allow you to start an exam, 5 years ago, and you can continue to take the exams until you pass. And so if you are in concern about your exams expiring, it would be worth having a conversation with CLARB, but also with your state board. With that being said, CLARB does job task analysis, so JTA, every 5 to 7 years. And based off the information we get from that JTA, there could be some changes that come to the CLARB LARE. And so that means that if there are some major changes, there's a potential that you may have to rush taking a certain section because you don't want to lose it, or you may take sections that you're not really prepared for because I'm not sure how aware you guys are of the new blueprint that we just went to about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. But with that change, you had to have passed two different sections in order to get credit for one section in the new blueprint. And so I would say if you could stay within that 5 year mark of passing the exams, you should be in the clear. If you go beyond that, that's when there could be changes that come to the exam that could cause you to either you could lose an exam, a section that you've already passed if you haven't passed another section, or you may have to take an additional exams. And so it could start off at 4, and then for some reason the JTA shows a lot of changes, and then we make it 6 exams instead. And so you have to sit 6 different times. And so there really is a chance for the LARE to change within that 5 to 7, years. But I would say if you're starting, there's no hard rule, but I would say play around with that like 5 year mark is where you're probably safe So I hope that answers your question. And if you need to go into any more detail about the JTA or anything like that, feel free to reach out to Clark directly and we can go in a little bit more detail about that.
If a degree is not LA specific but in a related field, what are the options to be licensed?
Yep. And I just want to say I'll take this last question. We'll move on through the rest of the presentation and then we'll continue with questions at the end. And so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that really does change from state to state as well. There are most states accept alternative pathways, but most of the time you're going to need probably more experience under a licensed landscape architect than you would with a straightforward accredited landscape architecture degree. So most of them do take an alternative degree or maybe no degree at all, but that just means that you're going to need, a little bit more experience or a lot of experience if you're going like a no degree pathway and you just have to go experience only. And that's not every state that actually accepts that. So I would say if you're going that route, reach out to us. We'll talk about the state specifically and what it looks like for you to pursue licensure there. Perfect. And thank you so much, State, for reading off those questions. All right, so we're going to move through the rest of the presentation. Please continue to put questions in the chat and then we'll get to them at the end. So, how do you get licensed? So, you're going to start with CLARB. Starting with CLARB is important because that is the only way that you're going to be able to actually take the exam. A CLARB record is required in order for you to sign up for the exams. The next step is consider where you want to work. As I've said before, there are different requirements for each state that you look to become licensed in. And so you really want to come familiar with the state and see if what the experience requirements are. Do they accept your degree if it's outside of a landscape architecture degree? Do they have supplemental exams that you have to take within the state, which is not something that CLARB handles. You handle that directly with the state after you apply for the application. And so coming familiar with what your state needs before you start the process is very important. So that way there's nothing that holds you up when you're all ready to get started and then, become licensed. Completing the 3 E's. So the 3 E's are education, exams, and employment. Most of the time for each state, you're going to need all three of those. As I did say, there are some states that have an experience only pathway, but there aren't many. And so that's just becoming familiar with your jurisdiction and deciding where you want to work and making sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that you can move forward with getting licensed once you have the experience, education, and exams passed. And then apply for licensure. So once you have all of these things done, so you have your education, your employment, and you've passed all of the sections of the LARE, you can then submit your record to your state board for initial licensure. A CLARB record is not required for most states to apply for initial licensure. However, when you're paying for a CLARB counseling record to take the exams, it is pretty beneficial to go ahead and get your transcripts verified in your record, to have your employment verified online. Your scores are already going to live in the record. And that makes it so easy to just click a button and apply for licensure once you're ready. So start with CLARB. Visit clarb.org to create your free account today. You can create a free account, which is just going to start a profile for you. So it's really just going to have your name, where you live, your email address. You can look at what reference materials that we have on the website. You can have access to practice exams. You can see what it is that CLARB is doing to give back to the community, how volunteers actually volunteer for CLARB and what impact they have on the landscape architecture community. And you'll get reminders and updates by email. So whenever the registration for the LARV is going to open, when we're looking for volunteers, when we have important webinars like one today that we're holding, you will have access to all of this information. And then start building out your profile as soon as possible. And then once it's time to start your record, you can do that and then start to add your education when you're ready, register for the exam when you're ready, and then obviously after passing all the exams, you can apply for a licensure. So this is a map that's going to be on our website. You're going to want to consider where you work, like I've said, just so that you can come familiar with where it is that you're going to become licensed and what is needed. So completing the 3 E's is education, examination, and experience. Your education, the most straightforward pathway to licensure for landscape architects is with an accredited landscape architecture degree. Each state has different experience requirements. but a lot of them make it a lot easier when you have an accredited LA degree. You're going to see that that's going to be the least amount of experience you need with your education as you start going into architecture degrees or engineer degrees, or maybe it's just not a related field degree. Maybe it's another bachelor's or an arts degree, or maybe you don't have experience, you don't have an education at all. That is okay. You can still apply for licensure. You just may have to jump through a couple more hoops, gain a little bit more experience, and have, a couple more conversations with CLARB and then your state board, with exactly how you should move forward. So that's going to be your first step. The next step, depending on the state that you choose. There are some states that they require you to apply directly to their state before you can start testing, regardless of your degree. We have 7 states that are currently pre-approval jurisdictions. So that means, for instance, like California, regardless of your degree, you will need to apply directly to the state for pre-approval before you can start testing. So they really just want to see your education. So if you have an accredited LA degree, they just want to see that you have an accredited LA degree. There's no experience needed. If you do not have an accredited LA degree, they will ask that you have some experience first. But most jurisdictions are direct registration state jurisdictions. And so that just means if you have an accredited LA degree, you don't need any experience first. As soon as you have graduated and you've received your degree, you can start a CLARB Council record and you can start testing immediately. So again, just become familiar with the state that you're looking to test in. That way that you know the proper steps. Here's your examination right here. It's going to be the inventory analysis and project management, planning and design, construction documentation and administration, grading, drainage, and stormwater management. So that's all 4 sections. I think it's important to note that even though they're in a certain order here on the slide, they're in a certain order on the website, there is no specific order. You do not have to pass one in order to take the next one. If you want to take grading and drainage first, you can take that first. If you want to take planning and design first, you can do that. If you want to take 2 sections in one administration, you can do that. If you want to take all 4 in one administration, you can do that. So move at your own pace. We do get the question all the time is, what exam would we recommend that you start with? And that's such a hard question because it really is up to you as a person and where your knowledge is and what you feel comfortable taking. These exams are $535 a piece, so I would say to start with the one that you're most comfortable with. If you feel that you can take 2 at a time, you can do that as well. Really move at your own pace and, take the exams that you feel comfortable passing the first time. And then gain experience and regulated practice. And so, as I did state before, there are direct registration states, which means with an accredited landscape architecture degree, you do not need to gain any experience. However, while you are in the process of taking the exam, you will need to gain that experience because that experience is going to be needed for initial licensure. And so, whether you gain that experience before you start testing or while you are testing, as long as it is post graduation, most states are going to accept that. Some states do accept internship hours, but it may just count a little different. So if you have internship hours that are 40 hours a week, they may look at it half time. Some states may accept all of that as just regular experience. And so again, it's just becoming familiar with your state and what it is that they require for licensure. Um, when you're gaining experience, you're gonna want to ask these questions. Am I gaining experience in grading, drainage, and stormwater management? Am I gaining experience in construction documentation, planning and design, inventory and analysis? That's gonna be very important because the states are gonna look to see that you have these skills and that you've gained these skills while out in the field. And then for pre-approval jurisdictions, this is going to be experience that you need to gain before you start testing. So, for example, Maryland. Is it Maryland? Yeah, Maryland. They want to see 2 years of experience under a licensed landscape architect before you start testing, regardless of your degree. So that means once you get your accredited landscape architecture degree, you're going to need to be in the field for 2 years and then apply to actually start taking the exam. Pennsylvania is another one. Massachusetts is another one. We have Texas, California, Alaska. All of these, Hawaii, all of these jurisdictions want you to apply to take the exam before you can actually start testing. Not all of them need experience, but they do want you to apply so that they can see where you are in the process, whether if it's just the education or how much experience you have. And then once you've done all of these things, you've got your education, you've passed all sections of the exam, you've gained the experience that you needed for your jurisdiction, you can use your CLARB record to apply for initial licensure. So what we do is we send over your education. We ask you to send over your degree. So you reach out to your school, send your transcripts to CLARB, and then we save that information and keep it in your CLARB record and send that over with the record when you apply for licensure. Your exams are already in the record once you pass all of them. And then your experience that is verified online. It kicks off an email to your supervisors asking them to take a 2 brief minutes to be able to fill that information out, and just speak a little bit to the experience that you had gained while you're working under them. We send all of that information to the state. We have you start a board application with the state so they can match your record to the application that you're starting with. And then they go through their process of, vetting whatever it is that they need to vet, ask the questions that they need to ask. And then the jurisdiction or state is going to be the one that actually issues your license. So once you have done all the things you need to, and CLARB sends your record over to the state, that is no longer in CLARB's hand. The state will be the one that reviews the rest of that and they say, hey, you are licensed or you are not licensed. And so this is CLARB certification. We call it CLARB certified. This is a nationally wide recognition that CLARB says we believe you meet the criteria to be licensed in any jurisdiction or state that you are applying to. We evaluate your education, we evaluate your experience. We see that you have already passed the exams, and we say, hey, you have all the skills, you have the education. CLAR believes that you should be able to get licensed in any jurisdiction. Now, just because you're CLAR certified doesn't mean that a state is going to accept your record for licensure. There may be some things that they don't like. Maybe if you have derogatory marks on your license, there can be many other things that would be a reason why you get denied for licensure. But being CLAR certified, we believe is going to expedite that process for you and hopefully make it easy for you to get licensure in any jurisdiction. And we do have this aligned with a uniform standard, and we have a uniform application that we send to the states. So again, landscape LARE for landscape architect registration examination. And then the landscape architect registration examination, again, is a measure of competency reflective of current practice and defensible. So as you did see earlier, this is your exam blueprint. The inventory and analysis has 100 items on the exam. Construction documentation has 100 items as well. Planning and design has 95 items. And then grading, drainage, and stormwater management has 80 items. As you can see, there's different bullet points here. It's what we call subdomains. And so that's going to be different domains within the exam. You can find this on our CLARB orientation guide. This will break it down a little bit more for you on how much of it's project management and how much of that project management, they're going to break down project management for you, or construction plans and details. It's going to break down construction details for you as well. Stormwater management is going to break that down for you. So I definitely recommend reading the orientation guide if you haven't got a chance to put your eyes on it. It does a lot. It talks about how we score the exam. It talks about all the items. You have 3 hours, 3 hours to take the exam, 3.5 hour seat time, because you do have to check into your exam. You got to show your ID. You have to go through the whole process of seeing the functionality of the exam as well. And so you're looking at about 3.5 hours, I would say, to take the exam. You don't have to use all that time, but you do have that time blocked off for yourself. And this is the admin periods that we currently have. So we do a spring admin, which is going to be in March/April, summer admin, which we finished up not too long ago, July and August. And then we have our next admin coming out in December. That admin's going to be from December 1st to December 14th. We do open up registration about 2.5 months before the admin. So we're coming up on that time frame of opening registration and putting out exam scores. And so we should see that within the next week. We send out communication letting everyone know that scores are available, as well as registration is open. And so if you are preparing to register for the exam, I would say next week, just be on the lookout for some type of notification that's going to let you know that scores are available as well as registration has opened. We do only test 3 times a year for a 2.5 week period. Let me see. I think that's pretty much it on the admins. And so I did, as I stated before, we do have two different type of jurisdictions that you're looking at. So all of these teal/greenish states that you see, they are direct registration states. So that just means if you have an accredited landscape architecture degree, you will be able to start taking the exam as soon as you receive that degree. If you are selecting to test at a green state and you do not have an accredited landscape architecture degree, you have to apply to that state in order to be approved to take the exam. And so again, if you do not have an accredited degree and you are in a state that is green on this map, you do have to apply to the state and get approval before you start testing. You see the states that are orange on the map. These states are pre-approval jurisdictions. And so that just means that, again, you will need to apply to the state before you can start testing. Whether you need experience or not is a great question. So I would recommend if you're in any of those orange states, you should reach out to Clark directly, or you can access this map on the website and it will let you know what is needed in order to start taking the exams. So, taking the exam, prepare for success. Again, we do have practice exams that are available on the website for $25 a piece. You get 3 attempts within a year. You have orientation guide. So again, that has a lot of information on CLARB, the exam, how we score it, what information is on the exam, the functionality of the exam, the different item types within the exam. So there's a lot of information in the orientation guide. I definitely recommend taking a look at that if you haven't. Recommended reading resources. We have those on the website. I want to say that it's around 3 books a section. There's not a preferred book to use. I think all of those books are great resource for each section. So they do become a kind of pricey. If you get just one, you can use it. Or if you have other individuals like in a study group, maybe you guys can kind of split the cost of getting multiple books, or you can ask your job if any of them have those books. ASLA again is a great resource. They hold a lot of sessions about the layer. I personally am going to be at ASLA in October doing a demystifying session, but also talking about CLARB as well. And so really do a great job in preparing candidates to be able to pursue licensure and then, even beyond that, maybe volunteer. And then removing barriers and increasing access for yourself within the landscape architecture community. So once you get licensed, what's next for you? So as I did state, CLARB certification, once you get licensed, CLARB certification really becomes a big deal when applying for reciprocity. There are going to be certain jurisdictions there's not a lot, but they are going to be looking for you to be CLARB certified in order to apply for reciprocal licensure. So again, it's just important to know what is needed for the state that you're pursuing licensure in. Get licensed in other jurisdictions. I see a lot of individuals that become principal for a firm or they start their own firm, and then they see how many licenses they can get. Oh man, I've been to this state and I've been to that state, and I think the most license that I've seen for one individual has been around 36. So some people they want to travel. Some job opportunities, if you're willing to travel, it opens up the door to be able to do that and gain experience in other jurisdictions and states. So it really just opens the door once you're licensed to be able to move throughout the United States and Canada and show off your expertise. License renewal reminders. And so CLARB does send out license reminders to you guys whenever you're about 3 months out from your license expiring. We give you a reminder and let you know that, hey, make sure you do everything that you need to do in order to renew your license, whether that's get the CEUs that you need or pay a fee with the state board, whatever it is that you may need to do. Continuing education tracking. This is a tool that we don't do much with. We do track it for you. So we do receive lists every month from ASLA for any person that has taken a CEU course through their organization. And we put those in your CLARB Council record or CLARB record for you. But we also allow you to enter in any CEU courses that you have taken over the years as well. So some of them, may not be through ASLA, and so you may have to add those yourself. And then exclusive perks and opportunities. And so again, it's really comes down to being able to give back to your landscape architect community, seeing what CLARB is doing to give back to the community or how they're impacting the community. We have multiple volunteer opportunities. I work specifically with the exam writing committee that is all volunteers that want to give back to the community and have an impact on the LARE. And so once you're licensed, maybe that's something that you want to consider is like, how can you give back to the community, whether if it's through CLARB or ASLA or through your local chapter? So your next steps are to start a CLARB profile if you haven't already. Again, that's completely free. It's just going to ask for minimal information. You can browse through the website. We have a brand new website on that we're working on right now. That is a little bit more user friendly than the last one. If you have had the chance to take a look, please go ahead and check that out. Sign up for emails and follow us on social media. So as long as you have your email preferences on, you will receive emails from us letting you know that you can now register for the exam. Scores are coming out. Volunteers are needed. Please help out. We have important webinars that we believe the community should know and hear. All of these things are recorded as well. And so if you're not able to make them, you still get access to that information. And then explore our exam resources. Again, the practice exams, recommended reading. We also have a functionality exam. So it's going to have questions that are unrelated to landscape architecture, but it's going to give you an idea on how to move throughout the exam because it is completely computer based, regardless if you're in person or not. And so there are four different item types within the exam. And so it's going to allow you to see multiple choice questions. It's going to allow you to see drag and drop. It's going to allow you to see hotspot items. It's going to allow to see select more than one answer. And so I would also recommend playing around with that a little bit. It tells you how you can take a break, how you can mark questions for review, how you can get to the end of the exam and submit your exam. So it really is a great tool in order to get yourself prepared for when you need to take the exam. And then registration opens soon. Again, we're going to send out that communication hopefully next week, letting you know that registration has opened. Exam scores are available. So as soon as that does happen and you're ready to test, I would go ahead and register and start scheduling your exams. As we all know, seats do tend to fill up, and so the quicker that you register, the more likely you are to get seat and location that you would prefer. In closing, it's all about health, safety, and well-being. There's professional benefits of being licensed. You can get the CLARB record that will help you through the process of licensure so you don't have to compile all that information yourself. And as always, we're here to help Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We can be reached by phone or email. And me, myself, Lindsay, or Staten would be more than happy to help you with any questions or any type of information that you need in regards to licensure. I really appreciate you guys sitting through. I know that was a ton of information that I dumped on you guys. So we got about another 18 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and just open up the floor for questions. We will be done at 3 o'clock. So if we don't get to all the questions, I do apologize. Feel free to reach out to us directly and we can answer any questions that you have, either email or through phone call.
Awesome. Thank you for all that information, Sean. We do have some really great questions that came up while you were speaking. So we have one person asking, is it possible to fulfill your work requirements to take your test while you were still in the process of finishing your degree?
So that goes back to the internship hours, kind of. Most states are looking for experience to be post-graduation. So once you've graduated, you receive your degree, that's when they want to see the experience. If there is experience that you've gained during the time of gaining your degree, please reach out to us. We'll have you also reach out to the state, and they can explain a little bit more on how they accept internship hours. You will not be able to take the exam before completing your degree, though, unless you're going an experience only pathway, and then you would need a ton of experience before you started testing either way. And so, really, you would need to at least have your degree before you start testing.
And then another person asked, they wanted you to clarify what is meant by experience. Is this similar to the PDP for the OALA, so the Ontario Landscape Architecture Association?
So it's probably pretty similar. Experience is just your employment history. So your experience within a landscape architecture firm working under a licensed landscape architect. It doesn't have to just be under a licensed landscape architect for most states. Some states accept experience under an engineer or an architect, as long as you're doing landscape architecture work. As long as you are fulfilling the skills that we're looking for, which is inventory analysis, planning and design, grading and drainage, construction documentation, the experience can be gained in many different ways. But the most straightforward is you're working directly under a licensed landscape architect that is supervising your work and can check off and say, you've gained enough experience in this field, in that field. If we're going to ask these questions when we send out employment verifications, have you done planting design? Have you done construction documentation? And that plays a part in CLARB certification as well. We look for experience in all four domains in order for you to meet CLARB certification. And so gaining the experience is really who you're working under and the type of work that you're doing. Hope that answers your question.
Kind of related, you touched on how to what verification means for your employment. Somebody asked what documentation is required to prove experience under a licensed LA. They also asked, does that experience ever expire?
So great question. We with the Clark Council record, we make it really simple. We allow you to put in your supervisor's information online. So the company, the dates that you worked, the amount of hours that you worked, the supervisor, and the skills that you practice while working there. Now we do have that listed there. You don't have to write those skills down. It's like a checkbox. Yes, I done this skill. Yes, I done that. No, I didn't do this. No, I didn't do that. We take that information and we send it directly to your supervisor by email. And we have them fill that information out and they talk to your professional conduct. They speak to the skills. They go a little bit more into detail. We do allow you to give an explanation of experience if you want to break down exactly what you're doing as far as the skills. And so we send that information off to the state, I mean, to your supervisor and have them basically sign off and say, yes, this information is correct. And if not, they can make changes to that information as well and say, this is the correct information. This is the experience that they gained. And then what was the second part of that question? I'm
Second
sorry.
part of the question was, does this experience ever expire if you, for example, worked under a landscape architect over 10 years ago?
So this is another one where, as far as CLARP's concerned, no, that experience does not expire. We will look at that experience for CLARP certification all the way back to whenever. If you gain that experience back in 1990, we will still look at that experience and say this person gained that experience, they gained the skills needed. We look at that for CLARB certification and we accept that. So I would say no, that experience doesn't expire. I've never seen someone have experience from 10 years ago and that was the only experience they had. And they come back and say a state said, no, we can't license you because that experience was gained 10 years ago. Now, state may want to see your most recent employment, that doesn't mean that it needs to be related to landscape architecture in order for you to pursue licensure.
Eduardo was stoked we answered his question. We have another question saying, does CLARB or ASLA do webinars on entrepreneurship? So what other webinars and resources do CLARB or ASLA provide that would be helpful to early career?
Um, I don't know about, I don't, that's a hard one. Maybe we can touch base offline. I don't know of any direct programs that CLARB holds, nor that ASLA does. That doesn't mean that they're not there. I would have to do a little bit more research. So I apologize that I can't answer that for you right at this moment. But if you don't mind just reaching out to me directly, and I'll point you to all the resources and all the webinars and things that we hold and see if any of that is going to be beneficial to you. And then obviously you can always search on the ASLA website to see if they have any type of entrepreneurship webinars and things like that. A lot of the things that we do, as far as my part of CLARB, is helping you through the process and understanding what it takes to get licensed and what you are going to do after licensure. And ASLA also has a ton of resources that they hold in order to help you through that process as well. So feel free to reach out to me directly and we can go a little bit more in detail about what it is that CLARB has.
Absolutely. Let me just run through the rest of the questions that came through.
Mhm.
Um, We had one person asking, does experience mean 1 calendar year? So is there like, how do we calculate the time, the experience time that that's going to count toward the experience requirements for licensure?
Yep. And so we look at it by the hours that you work per week and then the amount of years. So for full time, we're looking at least 35 hours a week for that to count as full time. And then it's just going to be years of experience. So if they say 2 years of experience, you need 2 years of full-time experience in order to gain to meet that requirement. If it's part-time experience, now this is just for CLARB. I don't know how states are going to accept part-time experience, but if it's anything under 35 hours a week, we count that as half-time. So if you've been working for a year for part-time under 35 hours a week, we're only looking at that as 6 months of experience. And so it really just depends on the hours and then how long you're working.
Um, I think we got to all of them so far.
I'll do a quick scan as well. I did see a question earlier before we started about pass rates. We do have pass rates on the website as well that are always available, and we do update them after each admin. So you can see back to the last 3 or 4 admins our pass rates. So feel free to again visit the website, um, and you should be able to get to there. Let me see if I'm seeing any other ones that I don't see to be answered. Um,
Jared asked
if I
how,
oh,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Um, we had someone ask how candidates are notified that the exam scores are available and where to access them to see their scores.
Yep. So we send out communication that exam scores are available. So if you're waiting on exam scores, just make sure your email communication as allow LARE emails, and you'll get notification. Once you do get that notification, you can access them in your record, and you'll just go to my profile, access my exam scores. And if you can't find that, feel free to reach out to us, and we can walk you through where to get them.
Awesome. Um, how does one qualify for CLARB certification if they do not have the 4-year accredited LA degree?
So just more experience is going to be needed. If you don't have just the straightforward landscape architecture degree, we look for experience all the way from 2 years all the way up to 8 years. So if you do not have a degree at all and you have a high school diploma, it's going to be 8 years of experience under a licensed professional. So engineer, landscape architect, planner, surveyor. Um, if if you have like an accredited architecture degree, I want to say it's like 4 years. If you have an other bachelor's, it's like 6 years. So it really just changes based off of the degree that you do have or a degree that you don't have.
We had another person asking, how long does it take for the state to pre-approve? So is there a predictable timeline for how long it takes to get that pre-approval?
So every state's different. Some states they meet quarterly, some states review applications, you know, every day, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it really is, it's really that way. Like every state has their own requirements, how they review applications, how long they take, if they wait till a bunch of applications come in and then review the whole process. And so if you do have a question or you're worried about being up against a tight timeline, I would recommend reaching out to your jurisdiction to ask them how often they do review applications in order to push them through for licensure.
We had somebody asking, if you are CLARB certified and licensed, does that open you up to job opportunities in Canada? So is that enough to work internationally?
Um, That's a hard one because again, like you still have to meet the requirements in Canada, whatever they may be. If it's in Calgary, BC, Ontario, you still have to meet that provenance, experience requirements, and education requirements. And so being CLARB certified does help, and being licensed does help, but you still have to meet whatever criteria they have you meet. And so I would say yes, but it just really depends. If you have an accredited landscape architecture degree with all the appropriate skills and 2 years of experience, you can technically be CLARB certified. But you may run into a jurisdiction that says, I need 4 years of experience. So even though you're CLARB certified and you have those 2 years of experience, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to just pursue licensure there. You may need to gain additional experience.
We have a person asking about provisional feedback. They'd like to understand what it is and whether it's reliable.
So it's 100% reliable. It is you have a 99.8% chance of having your score change. And it really comes down to maybe if someone cheated or not. That's really what it's going to come down to. It is very unlikely that your score is going to change if you get likely to pass at the end of your exam. I would assume that you're going to have that when actual scores come out. If you get likely to fail, I would assume that you're going to have likely to fail. There has been some instances where a likely to fail has changed to a likely to pass. There has not been one instance where a likely to pass has changed to likely to fail. The only way that I really see that happen is if for some reason you get caught cheating. Um, but what we do is we had a lot of people ask why it is that we wait 4 to 6 weeks to give out scores. And it's really because of the way that we score the exam. We have to get all the data that goes behind that. And so the way that we combated that was we were giving you provisional feedback. And so that means just at the end of your exam, you're going to get a likely to pass or likely to fail. That way that you can kind of assume what you're going to get when the actual score comes out 4 to 6 weeks later. We rolled these out one exam at a time, but now all 4 exams do offer provisional feedback. And so regardless of the exam that you take, you will get provisional feedback at the end of the exam. If for some reason you don't, feel free to reach out to Clark. We can get access to that information for you.
And then I think we have, this is a great question. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in. We have someone saying, I'm currently working under a licensed landscape architect, but will be going back to school to apply for licensure. Will the hours I'm gaining now before meeting the educational requirements still count?
Um, I'm gonna, this is gonna sound terrible, but it's gonna be up to the state. I hate to keep deflecting to the state, but it really does come down to that. The state is the one that makes that ultimate decision. If CLARB was looking at that for CLARB certification, we would count that experience. But there may be a state that says, "Hey, no, we you needed that experience before your degree, after your degree." So I would say for that question, it would be great maybe to just talk offline. If there's a state specifically that you're considering, we can kind of go through, has it been possible to be able to push that experience through before from my experience or not? And break that down just a little bit more. I did see one question that came in just a little bit earlier. It says, if I get licensed in Virginia, then do I transfer license to California? So you don't have to transfer. You can actually apply for reciprocity and hold licensure in both of those jurisdictions. If you are deciding that you got initially licensed in California, but then you're moving to Virginia, you're never going to work in California again, that's completely fine. Apply for reciprocity, let California's license lapse, and then now you still hold your license in Virginia. You don't have to always keep the license that you become initially licensed in valid, as long as you hold a license. So if you go from California to Virginia, I'm never going to California again, you let that expire, and then you have your Virginia license, that's fine. Or you can hold the California license, the Virginia license, DC, Maryland. You can hold as many licenses as you would like. As long as you have one license, you shouldn't have any issue. Your initial licensure state is not a big deal.
If we have, I think we have time for a couple more. So how would it
Mhm.
work for a 2-year degree in landscape design? So do you have a way of taking the LA area and getting licensed if you don't have a degree in LA in landscape architecture?
You do. You just may need more experience.
Mhm.
And that experience is going to vary depending on the state that you're trying to get licensed in. And so
Mhm.
I would say if you're considering getting licensed, go ahead and reach out to us. Let us know the state. We'll let you know if they accept the type of degree that you have or if they don't need a degree and then what that experience looks like. And if we don't have that information, we'll just direct you to the state so they can give you the more straightforward answer for that information.
Um, I believe we have gone through all of the questions. Natalia did ask, what does JTA stand for? I replied to her, but um,
Hmm. Yeah. So JTA stands for Job Task Analysis. And what that is we send out a survey to all landscape architects within the community. And we simply ask, what does landscape architecture look like today? And we go through many, many questions and we ask them to fill out that entire survey. When we get that survey back, that could cause changes to the LARE. That could cause merging of two exams. That could cause us to split two exams. That could have us add another exam. And so it really is just a survey to say what is relevant to today's landscape architecture.
We have another person asking, they said they did an art landscape architectural internship during their master's. It was technical urbanism work where they used LA skills, but they were not supervised by a licensed LA. Can they use those hours to apply for licensure?
So some states do have related work as part of your experience. And so, for example, like I said earlier with California, they need to see 2 years of experience in total, but only one of those years needs to be under a licensed landscape architect. That other year can just be related to the field of landscape architecture. So if you're still doing the work, but not necessarily working directly under a licensed landscape architect, you can still gain the experience, but you still would need to make sure you meet that experience under a licensed LA as well.
Awesome.
All right, and that puts us at 3 o'clock. And so we are going to wrap this up. I really do appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. Staten, thank you so much for also joining me, reading questions and answering any questions that you could in the chat. This recording will be available soon. We will let everyone know when it is posted to the website. Other than that, I hope everyone has a great weekend and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, everyone.